brought a lot of it in Kenya. People have said that there are many hits, there are misses, and it's a victim of misinformation and disinformation. We'll also talk about the enigma, a man by the name Mr. Raila Odinga and the African Union candidature. Karibuni. So we've got a special guest from the Higher Education Loans Board who is going to give us a bird's eye view of the entire program and what it means to Kenyans. But before we begin, I'd like to introduce the only female panelist in the show. We are working hard to ensure that we don't bring a Mandel. Her name is Gachui Kariuki.
Thank you for having me.
We have Musa Chelanga, who is an altar boy emeritus and highly regarded lawyer in Kenya.
Thanks for having me.
And then we have Mr. William Mbala, is a senior credit officer at the Higher Education Loans Board. Now, without beating around the bush, Mr. Mbala, there are many Kenyans who don't understand this organization called the Higher Education Loans Board. What is the board all about before we go into the details of the funding model?
Thank you very much. Higher Education Loans Board, acronym HELB, is a state agency of government of Kenya, and its business is to empower Kenyans who wish to pursue higher education, both in university and TVET colleges. We support through scholarships, bursaries, and loans.
Now, talking about scholarships, Musa Chelanga is a lawyer. He's read so many books about the Kenyan constitution and law. And he's been asking a question. Does the government have the obligation to support higher education in Kenya?
Thank you very much for the question. Yes, much as it is said that higher education might be a privilege for many, and the government is possibly mandated to do the basic education, we understand that the benefit accruing from higher education will be a benefit for the whole country. That is the economic progress of a country. And that's why as a government, it's interested in economic development of a country, and that much then government will come in to support Kenyans who wish to pursue higher education.
But before Musa comes in, assuming that we've got a population of about 50 million Kenyans, how many in fact qualify to go to universities? I mean, a percentage. And how many out of the ones who qualify to attend universities, how many actually get loans?
Every year, about 800,000 Kenyans sit for KCSE examination. And about 22% do get C+ and above, therefore qualifying to pursue higher education in universities, while the rest qualify to pursue further studies at TVET colleges around the country. With the new funding model, all students who qualify to pursue studies in higher education are funded by government, as opposed to earlier old funding model where some students were left out. The actual mantra in new funding model is leave no student behind.
Now, these students who are not left behind, do they actually get to settle their obligations after completing university or higher education?
Yes.
What would be the success rate?
We could say there's a good story with regards to repayment after they've completed their studies. And if you look at it, our performing loan is about 70 to the extreme. And
70%?
Yes, at least 73% and thereabout. And you understand that there's a gap usually between once you have finished your studies and when you actually begin to get involved in economic gain. So that's why it might be lower at the first, immediately after graduation, but thereafter these numbers peak, so that then we can have a better repayment from those who have completed their studies.
Now, before we start talking about the Kenyan situation into detail, the biggest challenge for majority of people in the US is these university debts. But I guess before student debts, I guess before we go to the US, Musa's got a number of burning issues. I can see him, he's warming up, he's doing press-ups.
Thank you, Mr. Mbala, for hosting this. It's a very complicated topic that has really put the country into a conversation in the last 1 week. Going into schools are opening this coming week. And Dismas has asked you about basic education. When we talk about Article 53 on the right of a child, you are entitled to a basic and compulsory education. Side that you see, as you say, the government is actually being gratuitous enough to be able to fund or to be able to help. But my question is that, have we got the basic education right even before we go to higher education? Because we have a problem also in the basic education. We have issues with junior secondary school. We have issues with, the funding, and we have issues with bursaries. And to start from there, from the basic education, and there have been a problem in Parliament recently. People have raised that there is a lot of money. Education is one of the biggest vote head in our budget. Yeah, we spend a lot of money on education. And one of the things that has become a thorn in the flesh is that we have members of Parliament called through national government CDF who have bursaries. We have county government who have bursaries. We have MCAs who have a bursary vote. Sometimes we even have charges who have. And someone was putting all these figures together and said, if we would consolidate or lump them together, then we may have a free education instead of this thing. So that is my question. And then maybe after that, you will now educate us. What was the previous funding model that is now subject of this conversation in contradicting what is happening now?
But before William comes in, don't you think that's an unfair question for William? Yes. To ask him to comment about basic education? And I suspect as a public servant, he may be limited. I don't know, but I was just thinking that you may be placing him.
In a rock and a hard place.
Yes.
Okay.
But the ball is in his court.
Yes.
He probably knows.
Whatever you're comfortable.
I think you give Dismas, and I think you're very right. I may not be in a good place to discuss about basic education, given that my workplace is more on higher education yes. And more specifically on financing of higher education. Yes. That's majorly what I'm able to comment on. Yes. So looking at the old funding model, how it was, and I'm sure some of you possibly have gone through it.
Benefited through Higher Education Loans Board.
That's yes, great. Yes. Great. Yes.
And all of them confirmed before the show that they're in good books.
Great. That's great. Yes. Now, the old funding model, if you look at it, we used to give students a block figure. Yes. All students were given same amount of money with regards to grant or what is currently called scholarship. Yes. That meant that even if you're poor or rich, you are getting the same amount of money. Then there's a part of it that we're given loan, and this loan now depended on your level of need. Yes. So we still use the MTI that we have improved over time. However, the balance. What is the meaning of MTI? MTI means testing instrument. It's an assessment tool to assess your level, your financial level of need, so then the government can come in to assist. Having used that, there's still a part of the fees that you are still to pay, even if you've been given loan and the grant. And it meant that Kenyans from poor background will still have a balance to pay. And some of them really struggle. I'm sure you've heard of stories of Kenyans who were even given full loan and grant, and still they were not able to pay the amount that the balance that they were supposed to pick up. And that's why the new funding model came in now to assist even further. Now, for those coming from very vulnerable household, they are taken care of by government to a very large extent. That is 95% of the program fees.
So you're saying that if somebody comes from, and I don't want to use the term poor because it's not politically correct, from the lawyer here, they like saying pecuniary challenges. But let's say they are vulnerable. So they can actually get up to 95%.
That is correct. 95% of your program cost or tuition cost and that means you are only left to pay the 5%. And on top of that, you are given upkeep of Kenya shillings 60,000.
So 60 is irrespective of your socioeconomic status.
60 is given to the most vulnerable student as per at the assessment. This used not to be the case before. The case before, even if you're given the 60, part of it was going to tuition. So the actual upkeep that you remained it in your pocket was a maximum of 52,000.
So how did you come up with this thing called MTI? Is it scientific? Is it born of research? Because there are people who have said that this is some sort of voodoo thinking, that you went to a boardroom or maybe by the beach in Mombasa, and then you came up with something. How is this MTI?
No, MTI is an assessment tool that has been used worldwide. We are not the first people to use, and it's being used elsewhere. And the whole reason for using this assessment tool is that resources are scarce. We have a certain cake, and we need to divide it amongst ourselves, the students that is. And you want to divide this cake in a manner that those people who need it most get most, while those who need least will get least. So the whole MTI thing is to assess you, and then we get to know how to share the available resources to all students, so that no student especially who's coming from a challenging background, is disadvantaged.
Before my colleague comes in, because you're talking about the scarcity of resources, and you talked about a repayment, that means your non-performing loan books is not that bad, you know. You have 70% is good enough. So why would we, for example, now that Higher Education Loans Board say it's not funded, it's not. Now, if you are working, for example, from my layman background, like you're a bank, yeah, if your non-performing books are good enough, you don't need funding from government, you don't need anyone. So that means that you maybe need a 30% of your budget every year, because there's maybe a rotating or revolving fund, because people get paid. We pay our loan and all that. Such that now, I was watching the NDC, it's called the Democrats National Democratic Convention. One of the congresswomen is called Alexandria Cortez in New York, I think, who was a bartender. She's still paying her loan, and she's a congresswoman. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So can we just make this? Is it possible to just commercialize it and make that Higher Education Loans Board is a bank for students, such that it is can be semi-autonomous government entity, but it's a commercial venture?
Is there not a risk that if you leave it to market forces,
yes,
then
the only thing maybe
we
we will control the interest? Okay, so let my colleague ask a question, and then I'll pick it up from there.
One comment first that I think it's before I ask you the question, education is an equity-based right, number one. Number two, I think everyone should be able to access higher education, contrary to my colleague here. Something I noticed, this is a discussion we were having over the Mandamano period around June, July, and we were talking about how these children who were out on the streets demanding for their rights, going through the Finance Act, a very complicated bill, going through the Constitution and matters public finance management, are the beneficiaries of the Kibaki era free primary school education. So ultimately, across the board, what I'm trying to say is with education, we're able to achieve a level playing field for everyone. And that is the dream, because money, money cannot give us equality. We don't come from the same background. We're not born from the same, with the same cards of fate. So my question to you again would be, perhaps you can in-depth explain the MTI criteria your agency is using to determine who gets more, who gets less. Are there other agencies you are working in collaboration with? I think that is what young people who might want to apply to this would want to know right now.
And also tell us, what is these bands? Band 1 to 5 or whatever it is that I saw the Chief Justice was saying. Some people are categorized into bands. And they say someone who's band 5 should be the least needy, but band 1, something like that. Maybe explain to us that, because people who are saying I should be in band 1, but I've been put in band 5, and therefore I cannot access.
Thank you very much. You're right that education is an equalizer, and it's what can, like Mandela said, it's one weapon that can be used to change a country. And yes, HELB is a learner's bank, if you look at it. And we are a semi-autonomous government, a saga, kind of, to speak, right? Now, coming to the mean testing instrument, commonly known as MTI, which we have used for a very long time, since 1995, when HELB started to give loans. Because previously, I think for those who studied those days, it was fully free. And then thereafter, the government introduced the cost sharing. I think that was in 1991, if you might remember, when it caused the big strike that particular time. So with the introduction of cost sharing, it meant that Kenyans had to put in some money from their pocket to pay for education. It happened that there are some people who are not able to pay for the part that they are required to pay, and that's how loans came in to assist. Now, the mean testing instrument has certain indicators we use to be able to determine your level of need. These are actually proxy indicators. To get the actual financial status of somebody is not usually very easy.
Is there human intervention in the MTI? Did you have somebody who makes an assessment, or it's purely on data entry?
It is it's a function that has algorithm that has made into a computer, and as you enter your data, as we verify your data, we fetch from various places that are legally allowed, then we are able to come up with a composite score which tells us something about you, tells us something in terms of your financial level, so that to which extent then can we come in to assist. So some of these proxy indicators are largely taken from published reports, and mostly the KNBS report, which has given us some poverty indicators that we're able to pick on to tell us something about your household. So these indicators are chosen correctly. Then we look at possibilities of getting data, because not all indicators you may be able to get data, but there are certain indicators that are easily verifiable. We pick this and we put it in the algorithm in a computer, so that then whenever you make requests for financing, as you enter your data, we are able to verify and we score you correctly, and thereafter we get your level of need.
That's where now you put me into a band.
Yes, so after doing the assessment, there will be groupings.
Yes.
There are those that will group them as most needy, those who need the highest
That's band one.
support. Yes, that will be band one.
Yes.
Then immediately after, there will be those who are also just as needy, but not as high as those who are put in band one. Then there will be the middle section, the band 3.
Yes.
Then from 4 could be people who they are needy, but just with a little push, they'll be able to make it. They don't need that much help compared to those we put in band 1. So 4 and 5. 5 will be those whom they can do. They can make do. And even in fact, in some instances, they might make do without government help. Okay. But of course, we understand that education as it is right now, and maybe economy, you still need some help. And yes, government will come in to help you to the extent that the assessment has brought it out.
Thank you, Mbala. But I want us to also help us to understand this, the difference between our education loans board, which is, you're saying, is a learner's bank, and a university fund. Where do you draw the line? Where's the difference between the two funds?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. Now, the new funding model has made it possible for these various government funding agencies to come together. Yes. But previously, university funds was largely dealing with universities, and it was giving grants to universities in a block manner. In this way, universities will admit the number of students, and then universities fund will send monies directly to the universities. Okay. In fact, you never knew how much it costed your education. Okay. In fact, those days, for those who went on regular programs, as opposed to the module 2 or the parallel, yes, you are being asked to pay an amount of, is it 50,000? Others 30,000.
So there was no individual costing per program.
Yes. So if you look at it, that was not the actual cost of training you.
Yes, of course.
It was the cost that remained after universities fund have taken care of
The rest.
the rest. Actually, it's a part of government, so they took care of a larger part. And that was 80% of the program fees, which we refer to as differentiated unit cost. That is DUC, which were flat rate. So whether you are you took science based, they had a certain amount. You took art based at a certain amount, and it didn't matter whether it is costly or not.
So university fund was taken care of
The grant part.
the grant part.
Then
So
the
there is-
20% you are to pay directly by yourself
or apply to
or apply
for help.
for HELB loan.
Okay. And now
Now, university fund is still taking care of what used to be called grant by giving scholarship directly. Now it's give directly to the students and not to the university. And that's why this model is now called a student-centered funding model, because it's the student being funded, and the student is being funded at actual cost.
so because there is the question that is in the public domain now is that the university education has gone high. You get, and people don't understand that model of funding that you're talking about, differentiated costing or student-based or student-centered funding. Because then in our days, education fund would fund 80%.
Correct.
Correct. But now, to my understanding, is that the university fund now gives me the money, or it funds me.
Give the students.
Gives the student, that is. And therefore, the fee, as I get my assessment or my invoice for school, is going higher. So is there any difference? Because you see, people are saying now the university education has become expensive. Is it expensive, or is it that now the funding is not going to the university directly, it's now coming to the student?
Actually, before William comes in,
Because that is the question now. Everybody's saying the cost of education is becoming higher than our time. But you're making a very crucial point that most people don't understand.
Yeah, and I think before William answers the question, now there's an opportunity for him to address this misinformation and the disinformation.
Yes.
Because in the past, people were basing their cost of university education on the balance of 20%.
Yes.
And you remember, people were given a boom. At some stage, it was 5,380.
Yes.
And because I remember all of you, you look young, but those university students, when they get to Nairobi, they would go to River Road, buy a large music system.
A stereo, yes.
Yeah, and then go to a place called a beard tank and, design some suits. And the balance was enough to pay fees for their siblings.
Yes.
But right now, people are now basing the cost on 20%. So when it's a block figure of 100%, then people who are unhappy with the changes are probably saying now, all of a sudden, university education is expensive. Because they didn't have information in the past.
Yeah.
And maybe William now has got a unique opportunity to disabuse people of these fallacies or notions that they may be holding.
Yeah, but at Dismas, you are right, that there's misinformation about this. People did not know how much it actually costed their training.
Like, for instance, right now,
Because of funding of universities.
the
Yes.
80%, yeah.
Yes.
Like, for instance, right now,
Yeah.
what is the cost of, and it's not an ambush, but I suspect you know, the cost of funding a lawyer, maybe at the University of Nairobi?
Yes, I'll give you an example. Funding a lawyer, I'm not so sure about University of Nairobi, but I know of Kenyatta University
Just any course.
should be 183,600 per year.
Okay.
And that cost has been there even before.
Yes.
It's only that government was not communicating
Yes.
to you. Government was footing the bill without telling you. Only the balance which you are given. Because if you look at it, if you are being told to pay 50,000, 50,000 is not sufficient to train a lawyer in this country. Not even in any country.
Anyway, in the world.
Anywhere in the world, that's not possible. But government was taking care of that. But in this new dispensation of new funding model, you will receive an admission letter telling you the actual cost of training.
183,000.
Yeah, 183,000. But it does not mean you're going to foot the whole bill.
I think that is what people have not understood.
Yes.
I think now that is as they say in the West, that is the elephant in the room. That when you get the admission with 183,000, the prospective students and the parents and guardians
They get shocked.
They get shocked. Their blood pressure goes up. Then they say the university education is becoming expensive.
Yeah. So if you look at it, that 183,600, if government is to come in and if you are assessed to be in band 1, just imagine government is going to take care of 95% of that. You're only going to pay 5%. And what is 5% of 183,600?
That is about 9,000.
Yes. Compare that with the previous funding model where everybody had to pay the 50,000. Even that person who is not able to pay. Yes. You know, it was kind of challenging. So in this funding model, if you are coming from a challenging background, the help from government will be so much that you are left with a small amount to pay. And remember, on top of that 95% funding, is an upkeep of 60,000. If you are required to pay that 9,000 shillings, that 9,000 is per year, divided by 2. So you are supposed to pay, that's 4,500 per semester.
You can use part of your upkeep.
And you've been given upkeep of 60,000.
Yes.
Is it
So
not helpful?
this is more affordable than the previous model.
Correct.
So, but why? I mean, then the problem we have is communication.
Exactly. I was going to say
From
that. It's
you,
just a
from
breakdown.
the funding
No.
agencies. Like, you have done it much better than anyone. I've never understood this.
Musa, I think again you have been unfair to William. You see, he's a senior credit officer, so he's probably an economist or an accountant. So communication, I think, is an entirely different department. But that is a fundamental issue. I think the administration has had challenges with communication, and in the absence of solid communications, you create a vacuum. Now the vacuum has been filled by propaganda, by misinformation, and it's disinformation to the extent that everybody in the education sector today is sweating. Yeah, they don't know. Is this the reason why university students are saying no to this?
I want to believe it's just about misinformation because some students think that it is going to cost them more. But if you look at it, after the assessment, some of those students, especially those in band 1, 2, and 3, they're actually going to pay less as they would have paid if we were still on the old funding model.
Now, assuming that these MTI, which is scientific, makes a mistake, there are somebody who is supposed to be in band 5 is in band 1, or the converse is the case, is there room for lack of a better word, manual appeal that a student now can face HELB and say, looking at my pecuniary situation today, I can't afford this is what I can afford?
Yes, there's an opportunity for a review, but the review, again, is not manual. It's system-based. We want to be very fair and very transparent and accountable on how we are doing business. So the process is there. You will still need to make an appeal, and it's even open right now. You log into the portal, they log into your account, and there's a place written funds appeal. You can make an appeal, request for review. Now, in this case, you will be requested to provide new information that you hadn't possibly given us before. Because remember, the information that you've given us before, we have already assessed and given you a score. So if you repeat the same information,
same outcome,
then the same outcome, right? So we expect that you'll give us more. And in that questionnaire, there are more questions being asked just to get it to know if there's anything we have missed. So with the new information, the system will again run the assessment. And if successful, and if the new information is there, then you're able to be rescored and then rebanded. And we could see which category are you falling, and therefore how much funding can you
I know communication is not your docket, but allow me to...
You still go ahead. Nevertheless.
Please allow me to ask this. Does the fact that you guys have HELB has different band categories, is this information communicated to applicants prior to making the application, number one? Number two, everything you have told us today, you've debunked a lot of things for myself. I honestly did not understand.
And you see, you're a lawyer, you're supposed to be a learned friend.
Imagine.
And you don't have this information. Yeah.
I was really struggling to understand why exactly there is a debacle, there's a fiasco, there's a lot of information flying around. Are you people communicating these things to the public? Everything. You see the intricate way you've just explained that to us. Are you explaining that to members of the public as well? Let's start with the band.
Thank you. You are right that communication is not my line. I'm on the lending side. Mine is to give money to this particular student. But yes, we work as a whole team, the HELB fraternity. And we have been holding sessions with stakeholders, all stakeholders. We visit universities. We invite even secondary schools, especially Form 4s, to join us in this meeting so that we are able to explain to them how this funding is taking place. We have meetings with the university fraternities and so forth. So we do really communicate to the stakeholders to be able to understand. And the ministry also does so much to be able to give out the information out there.
But there's been a problem with, if you watch the media recently, is that I know you've said that there is an appeal process or a review process. There's people who basically they have seen that they come from a very pecuniarily challenged background. And I'm very passionate about this because where I come from, people have a lot of problems with access to higher education or even funding for that matter. Is that someone is from, that poor background, then he's been put in band 5. And the other way around. Someone who lives in Karen and any other place has been in band 1. So now how do we address that? Because that's the elephant in the room, to use the words of Dismas. Because you see, if we go now, we just interact electronically or technologically. I mean, we may need to have do we have an access or do we have an avenue of human interaction? I remember I had, when Governor Cheboy was the CEO of Higher Education Loans Board, I had a challenge with I had to go and see him. Kipsang Belu, I think, was one of the senior officers there. I had to go and meet them to be able to disburse my loan. So is there that avenue now whereby people can, and even can you even cascade down that you cannot just live in this ivory tower called Nairobi, that you can also have an office in Eldoret or in Mombasa or in Kakamega, where students can be able to interact with you?
But before you answer that question, yes, I'd like to take a divergent view from what Musa is talking about. If the system is pure electronic, yes, or ICT based, yes, it means probability of having outcomes which reflect equity and are equitable, to use the NGO terminology, is 100%. Now, if you've got this solid system,
it cannot be 100%.
That's why I said probability.
Yeah. Yes.
So I'm wondering, if HELB is technology driven, why do you want them to have an office in Mosocho? And then, if HELB is technology driven, why do you want my local chief to be part of the assessment process? In my view, what the students must do, they must reflect first before keying in the data. Because, we are told in ICT, garbage in, garbage out. Yeah, so the student must be very careful. Because even right now, the people are complaining that wherever HELB is located, you've got a lot of office space and you're supposed to be technology driven. All these money apps we have in Kenya, I don't want to market any, but people rely on them to take decisions. When you're applying for Fuliza, you don't need to go and see anybody within Safaricom.
But they're in business. I think also you should also have a business mind, because you are lending me money and I'm going to repay with some little interest, not as a bank. So you must have a customer care.
Yeah, you're right. We have a customer care, and actually customer business is really what drives us. And you're right, garbage in, garbage out. And like I said, the MTI, mean testing instrument, is picking up this data from you, the applicant. And this data is verified, and is verified instantaneously, because we do have data sharing agreements with various institutions to be able to verify whatever you are giving to us. But first, you have to give the data for us to be able to process. So if you hold on some information, then chances are the assessment may not be right.
Yes, true.
It might put you in lower band, that is band 5, when actually you should be in higher bands of band 1 or band 2. The converse is very difficult, that you'll be put in band 1 when you're supposed to be in band 5. Remember, the data you are giving us is verified. I've seen some of the students that have complained on media, and I've tried to follow up. In fact, one I have had a conversation with. Interestingly, they did hold some information.
They withheld information?
Yes. they withheld.
Could benefit them.
They like, for instance, one student I spoke to today did not disclose that he had 3 other siblings in higher education at the same time. And that means higher burden to the family.
Band one thing about,
And that information is also being scored.
It's very critical.
Yes. You fail to disclose that, then we are not able to score you accordingly. Some other students were sponsored in secondary school. That information is important for us to know, because we could find out the type of school you went to and the much expenditure that your parent had to pay for school fees, right? But then it could be that your parents were not paying. You are being assisted. If that information could come to us during application, then you are assessed properly. You withhold that information, you will be misassessed.
Yeah, finally, I mean, I'm sure the president, I'm told the president is having a town hall on the same thing this evening. It's a very critical information. Just as we wrap up, as before my colleague asked the last question, is you're saying that you have a data or information sharing system. And one things that Kenyans have very serious concern is privacy and data protection. That are they covered to that end? Because you may be breaching some legislations or in terms of
Privacy
Data
rights.
Protection Act and also Article 91 rights of privacy. So what measures do you have there? Because I'm sure you share with M-Pesa, maybe Safaricom, maybe KRA and other agencies within the Republic. I don't want you to disclose, but those are just the things off my head. But are you complying with the data protection laws?
Yes.
Globally and
Locally.
Yes, that is correct. We take data protection seriously, and in all our data sharing agreements, we go through the Data Protection Commissioner does give us that authority. We do make requests and explain exactly what are we looking for in our data, and to what extent are we going to use this data. So we have done very well in terms of data privacy, so that then we do not breach any law in the country. Yep.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got maybe my second last, because I can see Gachui is doing press ups once more. But for a student who has attended, say, international schools, maybe they've undergone through the UK education model, when they apply for these supports, how does that affect the bands?
Yes, if you attended a school.
Yeah, say Hillcrest.
Yes,
or
and
St. Mary's School.
yes, that is correct. Like we said, those proxy indicators that are taken into MTI is able to pick the type of school that you went through,
Okay.
and the amount of money you actually paid towards your school fees, and that will be taken into the function and be able to assess you accordingly. Of course, if you went to schools that you are paying as much as you would pay in the university, then definitely you scored, you'll get lower points, as opposed to somebody who went to a school, the school that even they are walking barefoot.
Like you mentioned.
What if they were St. Andrew's story but on scholarship?
Yeah, that scholarship also
That is
scored.
also factored.
Yeah, it's also
Okay.
factored in that you went there not on your own, but somebody else got to assist you. So that is also factored in the function of the MTI.
Now, William, because this funding model has come through, I mean, everybody, we've got about 50 million Kenyans. Every Kenyan has got a view about, rather they formed an opinion about this model. So as a wrap-up, what is the one thing that you want a student who is about to apply a loan to know, and their guardians or their sponsors or their parents? Because this funding model, based on the information in the public space, has given many people sleepless nights. And they think that HELB is not much more than an organization which wants to suffocate higher education in Kenya.
Thank you very much. Now, HELB and even the universities fund are government agencies. And our business is to ensure that all Kenyans pursue their higher education without barriers of finances. So whatever bill or whatever admission letter you've gotten with whatever crazy figure you might want to think of, you do not need to pay that money as a whole. As a government agency, we are able to sort you out, we're able to pay. So all you need is to make a request for financial assistance. And in the event, the initial assessment you feel you disagree with or it's disadvantaging you, there's still an opportunity to request for a review through an appeal. And certainly, we are able to sort you out. Last year we did, and all the 113,000 students who applied last year, all of them were funded. And even this year, we had a target of 122,000. Even though we have already surpassed the target, we're now at 134,000, and we expect that we might reach the 153,000, which being the number of students who are placed to pursue higher education.
In public universities, but can you address
in public
also in private universities?
Yes, even in private universities.
So in other words, you're saying out of the 153,000 students who qualify for university education in Kenya, all of them 100% will get support.
All students will be supported by government. All of them. So they just need to make a request.
So no student is left out.
No student is left behind. With this new funding model, all students are supported, be it in public or in private university. All of them will be supported by government.
Yeah, I think, William, that has been very useful information. So we'll let you leave to go and ensure that there is 100% support.
And
Thank
no
you very
student
much.
is left behind.
Yeah, no child is left behind. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you very much, listeners.
Asante sana.
Thank you, William.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Now, Mr. Raila Odinga is Kenya's candidate for the AUC position.
Right,
And,
Honorable.
I know lawyers are very specific with honorifics. So let me do that again. The Right Honorable Raila Odinga is getting unlimited support from the administration for the AUC position. But there are many questions lingering. That what is in it for Kenya? what are the interests, and what are the consequences. And the moment you talk about interest, Professor, there are people who are already feeling that they are orphans, that at the moment the Right Honorable Odinga leaves the Kenyan political space, we are going to have political orphans, that Azimio may just melt because Mr. Right Honorable Raila Odinga is the glue holding the party together. And then others are even saying that for the position he's looking at is actually too old because he's going to be turning 80 next year. And in a strange turn of events, some Kenyans describing themselves as patriotic have been on social media writing letters to anybody and everybody saying that we are not supporting Mr. Raila Odinga. And President Ruto is expected on Tuesday to launch his candidature. And from reports, you understand that the heads of states from East Africa will be in town. So maybe going by the first step, do you actually believe that they're going to be political orphans if Mr. Raila becomes the AUC boss?
Well, I mean, definitely the space that the Right Honorable Raila Odinga occupies in the Kenyan politics is a massive space. And you would actually say that there are a number of politicians who've actually ascended to different positions of power, courtesy of holding the Right Honorable's cloth. And therefore, to a large extent, you wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these politicians consider themselves not really as orphans, but consider themselves as casualties of Raila's exit from this political space, especially in the areas where Raila commands significant political capital. There are people who've survived simply by invoking Raila's name, and from where I see it, I think it's a good thing that everyone will now have to fight for their own space. I think where I come from in Migori, Kisumu, Homa Bay, guys are already saying that, this time around you will not go to parliament, you will not go to the Senate, you will not win a gubernatorial race simply because you're going to help Baba. You have to distinguish yourself if you're a sitting MP or if you're an aspiring MP, senator or governor. You'll have to assert yourself even without Baba. And I think it puts us in a very interesting space where it is the needs of the people that will determine who ascends to a position, elective position of power. But I think having said that, it's also important to remind Kenyans that it doesn't matter how many letters you write and the posts you do on social media. I think a number of us are just making a fool of a situation that we should all support. Because at the end of the day, it is the candidature of Raila Odinga, once endorsed by the country, by the state. The noises of people on social media is irrelevant and immaterial. The candidature of Raila is a candidature that will be for all Africans. He will present himself. I think there'll be a televised, presentation of all the candidates. And if he distinguishes himself, I don't think, the vitriol that we see on social media will matter most. I think what matters for Baba right now is the fact that President William Ruto is solidly behind him, has put together machinery to help him, get this position. As you always say, we can export talent, and Baba is one. Baba is one talent with experience. Someone might look at age, but I think there are a number of Kenyans, and I belong into that category. I'm looking at the experience that is bringing to this position. Service depends on experience, capacity, and content of someone's character.
Now, Gachui, I've had the chance of interacting with the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. Yeah. I'm very careful with Musa Chelanga, with honorifics. And when you are discussing any subject with him, if you are discussing soccer or football, he's got very detailed knowledge. If you're talking about university education in Africa, he will tell you who was the first professor to come to Africa, what he did. If you're talking about even climate change, he's at home with all these issues. But when you go to a political party called ODM, understand D stands for democracy or democratic. And Professor has indicated that, and I'm not putting words into your mouth, I have no capacity to do that, but with the exit of Mr. Raila Odinga from the Kenyan political space, the ODM, for the first time, may actually become a democratic party. There are candidates
it has always been.
There are candidates who are going to run for party primaries. Now it's going to be meritocracy. Because in the past, people have said words to the effect that Baba said, I want these 3 candidates to assist me in Nairobi. There's actually an election where we are told that one of the candidates who was running for the Senate did not print one poster. And even when he was declared winner, he was not in his village. And one of IBC officials was sent looking for him all over Nairobi to give him that card. So do you share that opinion that his exit from ODM will actually make ODM a democratic party, or that may be the end of ODM as we know it?
First of all, I think Baba is a statesman, and I'm very excited about his AUC bid, and I do hope he clinches it ultimately.
Although, hope is not a strategy.
But very important, nonetheless. But as far as ODM is concerned, and for somebody, I've not been in the political space for very long, but I must say that the Orange Democratic Movement Party is the most, or the second most institutionalized political party in Kenya, probably after KANU. Yeah.
And the most consequential.
And as Prof was saying, it's probably time now we see a lot of meritocracy in how party primaries are conducted, in how candidates sell their pitches on the ground when they go to campaign, and perhaps even members of the public are given a chance, or voters are given a chance to vote on grounds meritocracy. But that said, the other thing I probably predict is ODM might become very popular in areas it probably wasn't very popular. I don't say Mount Kenya, but when you remove
call us spade. Don't beat around the bush.
When you remove the enigmas image from ODM, it probably could be a bit more friendly to certain regions. You never know. But I don't think the ODM party, I don't think the game is over for them. It's not over until it's over. They still have a very good shot in 2027. Yeah.
So you're saying that Baba probably is exiting ODM with that Raila phobia?
Yes, hopefully. Hopefully, the boogeyman theory, especially in Mount Kenya, probably it could be a popular party in the mountain.
Musa, you are described as I don't know whether it's a legal scholar and researcher of international repute. Now, when the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, I'm very careful with these honorifics, if he becomes the AUC boss, what does that mean for Mura? What does that mean for Wanjiru? What does that mean for Nairobi?
Probably may mean nothing, but it means a lot.
It means nothing?
I mean, for the country, I would look for it at the global perspective, is that we'll have a Kenyan who is the chairman of African Union Commission. So that one will put us in an international pedestal as a country, that we are now chairing Africa. And we are also, a global powerhouse or a continental powerhouse for that. So it means a lot for us that we have... our president is popular, so people have a different opinion. We have a chairman of African Union. So it's a marketing tool for a country. For strategically, it is good for us at the continental level. At the global level also, it would be good for the country. But Mora and Cherono may not feel that in terms of economics, in terms of socio-economic status, but for a country at a strategic geopolitical placing, that would be very good for Kenya. And you see, Kenyans have been saying they are voting for a guy from Djibouti. But of course, Kenyans don't have votes for that. But I think it beholds all of us. It behoves everyone. Like Right Honorable Musalia Mudavadi said, much as we are sharing, we cheer our athletes in the Olympics. So Raila Odinga is going to a continental Olympic, and we should be able to cheer him like every Kenyan that we cheer in a global stage. So I think it is good for the country, it's good for him, and I wish him all the best. And when Monday comes, or is it Tuesday? Tuesday, when the president is going to launch his candidates like other projects, I hope it goes through.
Having made a very good point, now you're diluting it. Yeah, but you raised a very important point when Musalia Mudavadi indicated that if there's any talent in Kenya that is shining at a global level or wants to shine at a global level, it's incumbent on Kenyans to give them unlimited support. For instance, when it's Cherono who is doing the Olympics and she wins a medal and they're playing the national anthem, whether or not you understand how to run or soccer or anything else, there's a feeling of pride.
Yeah.
So I don't know why Kenyans, even if they don't know how the voting takes place, because some others are under the impression that it's going to be IBC doing elections across Africa. They don't know that it's only the heads of states who are going to vote. But having established that fact, Professor Owilla, do you actually believe that we have enough Kenyans holding international assignments in international bodies, like the United Nations, World Bank, IMF, other institutions of learning, like say Harvard, where you've got a dream, Yale, international corporations like maybe Microsoft? Do we have sufficient number, or is there a reason as to why we don't have sufficient numbers?
While at it also, there is a Dr. Orina who is in court saying that he's been denied a chance to be chairman of African Union.
Is he a lawyer?
He's based in the US. He filed a case last week, I think, in court, and he said that Raila
He's been disenfranchised.
He's been disenfranchised and should have the same footing with Raila. Anyway, proceed.
Well, I think they're basic. There's a threshold for going for this position. You must have held,
You have backing of government.
Yeah, you must have the backing of the government, but then you must have had a policy level position in your government or at the African level that is equivalent of a cabinet minister. So I'm not so sure the arena that is complaining of being disenfranchised has held that kind of a position. But I think coming back to your question, Dismas, I think one of the key things that Kenya celebrates globally is an elite crop of professionals. I mean, we may not be at the very top of heading, global institutions, but we are actually well placed in so many different institutions. I mean, Kenyans, if you go to Microsoft, there are enough Kenyans, are doing amazing work. If you go to the UN, there are enough Kenyans doing amazing work. If you go to the academy where, I think I can authoritatively speak. I mean, Kenyans are in very elite universities globally. Rock Ajuru, just the other day, I think we unfortunately passed on. But you hear the way people are speaking about Rock Ajuru, he's a renowned professor and what he did in South Africa. It's fairly big, So I would say that, our education system has put us in a very, strong position to get into this global organization and influence policy and, of course, policy and politics, not necessarily politics. But I think one thing that I've realized is that, Raila's going to AUC has like two prongs to it. There's one of the prong that looks at, we are going to have a Kenya at a very strategic geopolitical position, which is good for this country. And the first one still has, we are going to have Raila probably exit honorably to a level where he can play politics, or he can easily retire as someone who has achieved beyond, what he would have achieved even by becoming the president of this country. But the second bit is for the country. I think for me, the fact that, the entire state machinery is out, all hands on deck to support Raila Odinga, probably is the reason why we are having this, government of this broad-based government,
But also, Dr. Prof, I would want to ask you one question that Kenyans are asking. Being the devil's advocate,
It seems like it's a role you like.
is that I saw Waiko. Yeah, he's in charge of Open Society. He was the chairman, or maybe he was one of the director of Katiba Institute. And he actually tweeted and asked Dr. Singoe, who is the principal secretary for diaspora affairs or foreign affairs, and asked him, okay, now we're going to do a launch. There is all these kind of things. And what was the undertone was that it is a Raila Ruto coalition or a bid, or is it Kenya's bid? And he actually, when he asked, he said, okay, where is the funding coming from? For this particular bid, for this particular campaign, is of course coming from the exchequer, but how would you justify that? I know it's a Kenyan candidate, but it's a question of elephant in the room, or what they call a bull in a China shop, that we need to address.
And do you think you're being fair to Professor Owilla with that question?
No, I mean,
I wanted with my colleague to also.
yes. I think your colleague can come. But, let me tell you. I mean, Raila is a candidate for the country.
Yes.
Kenya's candidate.
Yeah, Kenya's candidate. And I mean, the questions about accountability and where those resources are coming from are very genuine questions. And they are questions that, I mean, the PS in charge of the whole process can easily, or should easily just respond to those questions. Where is the money coming from? Which budget? And what is in it for the country? Because I think communication is very critical. There is a lot in it for this country if we get that. But before Akili comes to elaborate on that, for me, the flip side is very simple. That there is no way, Raila was going to be a solid candidate unless Kenya was at peace and there was something that was done, given the turmoil that we were going through with the Gen Z revolution. And from where I see it, I think there has been, that truth that has seen a number of ODM MPs and people who are affiliated to ODM, whether they were MPs or not, get to cabinet. So there are two things that I'm seeing there. One, they cannot tell us that there isn't an arrangement between ODM and Kenya Kwanza. Individuals have not been released. It is the political party that has gotten into that position. And interestingly for Kenyans, it might serve us because there is no excuse for this Kenya Kwanza and ODM relationship. They have a cabinet that has been endorsed by parliament, and they can do almost everything they want to do for Kenyans. Because with that cabinet and the numbers, if you compare the numbers, when you have Kenya Kwanza and ODM, anything they want to do that is good for Kenyans, that is not within a legislative framework, they can actually come up with a legislation and anchor it. So there are two things, just like I said, Raila's going could be a blessing in disguise, a coming together of a government that can serve the interest of the people, because they have a cabinet that they say has top talent from ODM, but they also have numbers in parliament. Anything that cabinet comes up with, which is good for Kenyans, they have numbers in parliament to provide that legislative underpinning. And there's no excuse for failure. If this government fails, it will be a good thing, because then they will not have any excuse for not allowing us to send them home. But for optimists like us, I think it's a win-win for us. Raila has gone democracy a bit, the way Dismas looks at it, but government has talent, has numbers in parliament. They can't fail to deliver on the promises that they made for Kenya.
So the talent that went to cabinet is the same talent we're exporting.
Before
my colleague says
Akili Junior comes in my view, these arrangements, there are a number of ODM MPs have joined the administration, and we are told that that is a top talent. And going by the vetting process, the Honorable Mbadi, Honorable Oparanya, during the vetting process, they said they opposed so many things in the Kenya Kwanza manifesto simply because they're members of ODM. You recall Honorable Oparanya said that with the benefit of time, Hustler is a very solid project. Mm-hmm. And he said because it was outside the government, he didn't realize what was solid in the administration, which appears to be a good thing. Even Honorable Mbadi, who has been speaking the last few days, he also indicated that the Finance Act was very solid, but he opposed it simply because he was in ODM. Mm-hmm. So it seems that both Kenya Kwanza and ODM are agreed that the Kenya Kwanza manifesto is a solid document, but it may need a bit of tweaking. Now, when we go to the National Assembly, it means that the members of minority will not be opposing whatever Kenya Kwanza is proposing for a sport. They'll be very objective. And one hopes that they'll do this serving Kenya's national interest. Yeah. That now they'll be properly aligned, not to Mr. Raila Odinga, not to President Ruto, but to Moraa and Wanjiru. And this is how my question comes in. There are people who have said that for Mr. Raila Odinga to export his top talent from ODM to the cabinet, and for him to go to the African Union, is actually abandoning Kenyans. They expected him not to export his talent to ODM, they expected him not to go to African Union, and they expected him to roam the streets of Nairobi, around Kibera, going to Muthaiga, going to Mosocho, going to Nyeri, with a lot of opposition politics, as he's always been known. Calling Mandamano at the flick of his finger. Do you think those are valid and legitimate expectations?
Yes. Ultimately, remember, Azimio as an outfit is the opposition. ODM party is the official opposition. Raila Odinga holds that particular position. It's not well defined in the constitution, yes, but ultimately that's what we understand as, the person who comes next or fails in the election takes over as the official opposition, and your job is to be the watchdog for the people. So to a certain extent, and perhaps to respond to Professor's concern on vitriol on social media, that is where it emanates from. That Kenyans had a lot of hope in Raila Odinga as the official opposition at the time. And initially it was not about, Baba join us in the protest, but Baba sit this one out. We're going to do this for ourselves. So when Baba decides to shake hands, but the signs were always there with the National Dialogue Committee last year. That was the first sign. The second one was, I think, the first presser they did at KICC with the president, the vice president, the deputy president, and I think Musalia Mudavadi, and calling the youth to get off the streets, have a sit down with the state, and converse on, coming up with better mechanisms of governance in this country. So I think that sense of abandonment and irresponsibility by the opposition still stands to a lot of Kenyans. And that's why I think, especially with my age group, no one really cares if he wins that bid or not. I personally would like for him to win, but the sense and the emotion across the body is, it is what it is. But nonetheless...
in physics, there's a basic law that says a vacuum shall not exist. Why can't other leaders within the Azmi infrastructure, if they feel that Mr. Right Honorable Raila Odinga has abandoned them, why can't another politician emerge from ODM, from DAP, or from Wiper? Is there a constitutional obligation that the opposition leader must be Raila Odinga?
There was these guys who were saying that, Raila has been there for us all along. You call your own mandamano if you want, to see how many people they can come. So I saw it's Silas Jakakimba, who was his PA, who said that Raila has been fighting for you all this time. So you also fight for yourself. But be that as it may, there is a schism, or there is a friction within the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya. Many of the parties have exited. I can see PNU. I saw Peter Munya saying that he's no longer a member of Azimio. Mother Karua has left.
Are those consequential political parties?
That is the point. That you asked a very critical point. Why has there been no emergence, or there is no one has emerged to fill the vacuum? To fill the vacuum, as it is, as much as Raila said that is exiting local politics, is the party leader of Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition, with Uhuru Kenyatta being the chairman. And they had issues last week. I think there was supposed to be a meeting and it never happened. So Raila is a phenomenal figure that it will take some time. We will miss him in Kenyan politics. Much as he said he's exiting it. Raila effect, or what we call the Raila phenomena, or the enigma as he is, still there. Much as he will be in Addis, but I'm sure he will. I hope he brings the headquarters to Nairobi. He will still be felt. However old he is 81. People feel that, like Biden, he should have just exited the stage honorably and. But there's no one who's feeling that.
Talking about age. How old is the new Bangladesh president?
I'm not sure about the age, but it's quite old. Yeah.
There you go. Yes. So for me, as far as I'm concerned, age or date of birth does not in any way determine capacity or competence to offer leadership.
Yes.
But Dismas, I think the thing with coalitions and the worry that we should have when Azimio is collapsing, all of us Kenyans, is that the process of building coalitions is very, very tedious, expensive, long. There's a lot of catfights, mistrust, and all that. And putting up a coalition like Azimio la Umoja is not very easy. Yes. Just like you have Kenya Kwanza, you appreciate, an antithesis of Kenya Kwanza in a very strong formation. And even with Raila's exit, I think it's incumbent upon ODM to be alive to the fact that whatever they put together as Azimio is a very significant and consequential coalition in this country, because it's the only corporate political party in this
Is it
country.
Azimio or ODM? Because
No, Azimio, I'm talking about Azimio. I'm talking about Azimio because, Azimio has all these political parties, including the ones that are leaving, But the whole process of crafting that coalition was a long process. It was very expensive. That we cannot as a country be comfortable when coalitions are formed and people can chicken out simply because one member of a coalition, not even a political party in the coalition, one member of a political coalition has an opportunity to serve in another capacity. And if there is anything that can be done, it's just a question of one leader emerging from that and holding Azimio together.
Is
and
Kalonzo that leader?
That leader could be anyone. It could be Kalonzo, it could be Peter Munya, it could be even a member just within ODM. Remember it could be anyone. Remember when Jaramogi Oginga Odinga died, when Kenneth Matiba, exited active politics, they never anointed anyone. They didn't give anyone any notice that now I'm exiting, you fill my shoes.
And someone emerged.
And it was a tussle. It is never easy. Yeah. We remember what happened in Ford, Kenya, when there was a tussle between the late Wamalwa Kijana and Raila Odinga. The skirmishes we saw in the election in Thika until Raila walked out. Yeah. That is the kind of thing we are talking about. We need to see people jostle for this leadership. People come out and say that Azimio is a very consequential political formation that is very vital in holding this government accountable, especially if there are members of ODM on the other side. You need a strong Azimio so that it speaks not as a political party like ODM is or NA Kenya is, but as a coalition of political parties. It would even give ODM members who have a problem with what the executive is doing more voice within Azimio as opposed to the voice that they would have within ODM. Because in a sense, it is easy to associate ODM with the executive, but you cannot do the same with Azimio.
I think there's an opportunity here. Before you come in, Wakili Junior, there's an opportunity for somebody within Azimio to demonstrate what they call in political science the killer instinct. Mm-hmm. There's nobody who has come out to demonstrate that he's got appetite for the Azimio leadership. The Honorable Jeremiah Kioni has been doing a news conference every day talking about Azimio, but he hasn't displayed that killer instinct. Yeah. And as a professor has indicated, if you don't want to come and demonstrate capacity and competence to lead the political party, then you sit on your hands and start blaming Raila Odinga, then it means you have no idea what politics is all about.
Exactly.
A vacuum has been created. Why can't you go and fill it? Why are you doing news conferences, telling people about phone calls that happened or they did not happen, and then saying you are pulling out, when in fact, your presence is not being felt whether you pulled out or whether you are in? Because, Musa, with alacrity, has mentioned a number of political parties that don't have members in the National Assembly nor the Senate. So I don't know where they derive their political capital from. So when they say they're pulling out...
You could be stepping on toes here.
Yes. I want to step on those toes. Yeah. So that when... if you are part of Azimio la Umoja, you are unhappy that Mr. Right Honorable Raila Odinga is going to AUC, and you are unhappy that he's exported what he describes as talent to ODM, why can't you step up and cause, an earthquake? You recall Mr. Musalia Mudavadi caused a political earthquake. Yes. Why can't you cause an earthquake? Yes. Because, it's very easy to go to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro and say anything and everything about Right Honorable Raila Odinga. But until the rubber meets the road, we'll continue dismissing you. Okay, Junior, sorry, I was taking your time.
I was going to say that I was just picking up on his point that now with the disintegration of Azimio due to Baba's exit, that goes to show that Baba is in fact an enigma. And none of the principals, the other Azimio principals, have the grit to inherit his seat. Although, like you say, it's just like in business. When you see an opportunity, jump on it. In politics, power is not given; it's taken. Go for it. Ultimately, so I think these principals, the ones who've been left behind, if at all, they were very sure that they could do it. And I think two of them, I'm not going to mention names, but two of them there have very good potential in terms of taking this thing and running with it. They would have taken it, but for some reason, I really don't understand why they'd choose to retreat, they'd choose to leave the coalition. I was part of the Azimio creation of the coalition, and I can tell you it is painstaking.
Full disclosure of material items.
And it is a coalition political party. Yeah.
And no one prepared for this.
And it's a first, and it's a first in Kenya, coming after the Political Parties Amendments Act of, I think, 2021.
Yeah, and you recall at one stage, Kalonzo kept us waiting for hours on end.
Exactly.
It's called, in business, as Professor would confirm, it's called a key person risk, In any organization, a key person, you have someone who you depend on him, and you don't train other people to take over that role. Yeah. So when that person leaves, the organization collapses.
But on the flip side, but Musa, on the flip side,
but this case now, why there is no one who's coming up as my colleague has said.
No, but on the flip side, one would shift responsibility to Raila Odinga. Sorry, Right Honorable Raila Odinga, that as a leader both within ODM and Azimio, is suffocated challenge. That it did not allow people to grow.
Wait
Wait a minute.
This is the blue matter. Because you see, if he was suffocating, now he has released himself.
Yes.
Now everyone can breathe. Now we need to see the guys who are being frustrated come out. They need to step up. And let me tell you, history will judge some of these leaders who are moving out of Azimio harshly. If you ask me.
That's true.
Because this is the opposition, this is the opportunity for them to demonstrate that they had a vision with this Azimio, and that vision did not rest in one person. Yes. So if the exit of just Raila Odinga is making people flee, you ask yourself, then what were you bringing in the table? Because if you're bringing something if you're bringing something substantive, this is the time to ascend to the next level and push Azimio to the next level. And I think if the leadership that is still remaining, because I think two have already bolted with their political parties. If the leadership that is still remaining, is serious about taking leadership of this country, like the current president was serious when he was disenfranchised in the last administration. He took it upon himself to champion the interest of the people. He was the voice of the people when there was simply no opposition. When ODM and what was it called?
BBI.
Yes, and BBI and all that was actually in top gear, serving the interest of the state, as it were, back then. The deputy president then went around the country and awakened a consciousness among the people, which resonated with so many Kenyans, and they say, now this is the direction to go. Now, if leaders in Azimio don't take cue, can't even learn from a recent history of what happened, and take this upon themselves and drive the agenda of this country as an alternative to what the government is offering, I don't think there'll be any other opportunity for some of these guys to redeem themselves.
Well, Okili Junior, you notice Professor uses a lot of energy and wisdom when you discuss ODM. But during the building of this Azimio coalition, did you come across any, and you don't need to mention names because libel and slander, but did you come across any politician who's got that killer instinct, who can step on the shoes of Raila Odinga, put them on, tie the sandals, and shake Kenya?
That killer instinct, not quite, but given the opportunity, they could grow into it. Or grow it.
That's a very diplomatic answer, but we'll take it.
There's a particular one, and I think he still has a lot of potential. He still has a statesman's appeal in this country. He can grow his party.
Just mention names.
But another, as we close, is that is it an opportunity also to have a break within Kenya Kwanza? Like you see, there is a lot of schism within Kenya Kwanza itself. You can see, I don't mention names, but there is a lot of discomfort. There's a discomfort. So is it good also to speak about divorce within Kenya Kwanza in some of the formations, or some of the parties, or some of the key individuals within Kenya Kwanza? As Professor said, William Ruto decided he's been sidelined, so he goes out on his way, hammer and tongs to become the champion. So is it an opportunity for Kenya Kwanza also to break and whoever have someone who can emerge as an opposition within Kenya Kwanza?
I think yesterday I saw the new SG for UDA, Hassan Omar, gave a warning shot.
Yes.
And he told all and sundry that it's not a shared presidency. It's not a co-presidency. There is one leader. And my understanding is that if you are uncomfortable with the current organization, then in the local saying, they say Kanyaga frame. So if you're unhappy with the obtaining situation, it's one president. So if there's a meeting at State House and for some reason you've not been invited, why would you go to the top of now this time around, literally, Mount Kenya and complain?
So is it an opportunity for that to emerge also?
If someone has got guts, if someone has got guts, and you think you have enough political capital, give it an attempt. But I think that will be suicidal.
Now, you know, from where I sit, what has happened in the recent few weeks tells you that probably there were individuals who are thinking that is possible, to rock the boat from within and then bolt out with some serious political capital. But I think if there was any sort of thing like that, it is totally distinguished by, the coming together of Raila Odinga and President William Ruto. And then number two, if there's a serious force, the force can only come from outside the government and specifically from Azimio, because that is where you have at least individuals who've been in this political terrain and have some gravitas and political capital that they can build. Looking at Kenya Kwanza and the team that the president used to ascend to power, you can actually tell that no one can replicate what William Ruto did. Now, this is a Kenyan who was a serious presidential contender from 2007 when they formed ODM. He was actually a member of the Pentagon. You see, then come 2013, he was so serious that he needed to go to whichever formation for that formation to win. Yeah. It's only that he chose to go the Jubilee way, and Jubilee won. Now, if you look at Kenya Kwanza as it is right now, no one has that kind of stature. No one can bolt out and build the momentum that President William Ruto built. But even from what they did during the campaign, I want to believe that they learned from what happened to President Uhuru Kenyatta, that they had a manifesto that they promised Kenyans they will deliver. And because of what they keep saying, the BBI is scuttled, everything, I don't think it is something that they would allow from within, that someone scuttles the vision that the president has for this country. And when you had Hassan Omar come out strongly, those are the signals. This is a government that was overwhelmingly voted by the people at the bottom of the pyramid, people who believe that it will change their lives. And I think even by bringing in ODM, it is to ensure that that vision is actually kept. History will judge, the president harshly if he touted himself as someone who rose from the bottom of the pyramid to the presidency, if he doesn't deliver for the guys at the bottom of the pyramid. And I don't think he would allow anyone from within Kenya Kwanza or his administration to rock the boat from within.
Now, Musa, before you close the show, two important items. One, the gentleman on my right today has been given a very serious national assignment. And I'd like him to blow his own trumpet. Owilla, please go ahead and blow your trumpet loudly.
This is a very interesting thing. You know that football is a big thing in Kenya. It's a big industry globally. Most Kenyans follow the English Premier League. Most Kenyans are passionate about football. And I got this honor to preside over the next election of the Football Kenya Federation. Wow. So there was a national delegates convention yesterday, and they endorsed the list. And we are gearing up. We want to believe that we will give Kenyan football the leadership that it deserves as members of the electoral board. Yep.
Yeah, you remember Wakili Jr., you said that this show is about politics, and polity. Now we've got our own member here who is participating in policy by ensuring that we get top talent. And you also recall last time we said that we need to celebrate people who are coming up with very solid policies. And the obtaining situation in Kenya today that every elected leader has got a bursary. They write out checks for education. And the Chief Justice, as well as the Speaker of the National Assembly, indicated that there's now need to have a specific framework so that we know a policy direction. Because an MCA can give out a bursary, a senator, every elected person in Kenya.
Governors,
everyone
is giving out.
And in the process, the administrative cost of giving out these bursaries is almost 50%. And because these gentlemen have given you a raw deal, Wakili Junior, you now need to take this head on. Yeah, they've taken almost all your time.
I know.
It's an unfair world.
Especially for women.
Sorry. I was very happy when I saw, actually I was quite shocked initially when I saw CJ Coleman's remarks. She's supposed to stay away from that to a certain extent, not give any comments that could be deemed political. But nonetheless, it's a policy issue, and we have seen what this country can go to when you ignore or sweep things under the rug. So I've not looked into it very well, but I'm hoping with the Speaker's directions to the PS education, we get quite solid frameworks and have a way forward that actually caters to all children in this country. If it was up to me, education should be free across the
So that we do away with all the bursaries.
Yes, that we can do away with all of that. Just come up with one consolidated fund that funds every child, whether you're rich, whether you're poor. Education is, in my opinion, a political right.
No, but
Everyone should be able to attain it.
Yeah, but Musa, majority of elected leaders, they derive their political capital from their capacity to give out bursaries. Do you think that, now you said the speaker gave the clerk instructions. I've seen he did a letter to the PS for Education. Assuming there is a policy framework and a legislative framework, Musa, do you believe that our elected members of the National Assembly and Senate would actually convert it into law?
I believe if they mean well for the country, they can do it. The problem we have, as you said, is that there's always that pleasure that they derive by issuing very demeaning, actually, it is actually an insult to the country because you have a member of parliament going and say, we are going to issue checks for bursaries. Then you find someone is being given a check of 5,000 shillings and you've traveled all the way from Oyugis to Migori to go and get 5,000 shillings. Yeah? So it's really
Oyugis is in Overbay.
Okay. No. But you can school in Overbay. I guess you. So the problem is that these members of parliament have what they call they blackmail the presidency. For example, hence CDF, National Government CDF, has been declared unconstitutional by the highest court in the land, but it's still there. Why? Because the president is using members of parliament to pass his own agenda. So if you refuse to disburse CDF, the MPs will scuttle your legislative and policy agenda in parliament. However unconstitutional it is. We have something called GAP for women. They call them Empowerment Affirmative Action Fund. You don't know what it is. You have Senate that they want to have oversight fund. But that's their work to oversight. Why do you want an oversight fund? So the problem we have in this country is there is no political goodwill because everyone wants, it's an ego trip, in my view, which at the end of the day ends up, not making any economic sense, not making any political sense, not making any human sense. And I think the president needs to stand up also and say, enough is enough. We have a lot of fiscal, budgetary, and monetary issues in this country that we need to deal with. So we cannot afford another issue whereby, another avenue of wastage. So I think it needs leadership.
So, Akili Jr., if you are to do an advisory to, say, the president, what would you tell him about the CDF and the bursaries?
Do away with them. They must be done
and
away
replace
with.
them with?
Simple. A singular consolidated fund or a singular fund that is run by the Ministry of Education. And they have very good mechanisms between the Ministry of Education and GAO, that's the National Government Administrative Office, formerly the Provincial Administration Unit. Use that to ensure that every child in this country goes to school. Anyone with the intention of attending a tertiary institution is able to access and attend those particular institutions. It's that simple, honestly. I don't understand why we have all... And just to respond to pick up on what my brother was saying, our National Assembly leaders might not be very keen to pass a law that addresses that particular issue and does away with the CDFs, the bursaries and whatnot. But should that pass, then that also brings us, the voters, to a point where we have to understand what the role of our legislators are and other elected leaders. Because their only role is oversight. At no point should an MP have any business handling money in this country. There is simply to oversight and legislate. Simple.
And
we are going to have to get to that point where all of us are forced to understand that point.
But if you need to, you said make education, I don't know whether it's free because taxpayers will still pay for it, but it requires a law.
Yeah.
So who is going to pass that law? Or as Musa would say, who is going to bail the cat?
This should be the MPs, in my view, because I remember, but you see, I think also we flip the question and say that we ask our Kenyans also, you expect too much from a member of parliament or from a leader. As when Wetangula was becoming the Speaker of the National Assembly, when he was welcoming the MPs in this august house, and he told them, welcome to this noble responsibility, whereby you will be a doctor, you will contribute to all the funerals, you will pay school fees for everyone, and you will pay fare for everyone. So you see, these are
There'll be an
enormous
ATM.
responsibility. You'll be an ATM for everyone. So I think also citizenry needs to have that awakening to see that what is the role of member of parliament. If you go to your village in Mososho today as an MP, the category of requests that you will have is an amazing. I mean, you incredibly high list that you have to pay. When you go there with $1 million shilling, you will come back with a negative. So I think also as a country or as people, we also need to understand what is the role of our leaders, other than putting them a lot of responsibility. And the leaders also now need to bell the cat and say, okay, for me not to pay school fees for kids, I want to pass a law that makes education or a policy that makes education free. It frees you. Yeah. For me not to pay.
So it will actually
Medicare,
serve their selfish interest.
it will help them. If you have universal health care, which I think is still under discussion at the policy level, at the cabinet, and if we have universal health care where everyone can get Medicare, then why do you need an MP to come and do a fundraiser for a medical bill? So I think also it's just being myopic. If these MPs are very serious about themselves, about the country, and about where they go forward, I think it serves their selfish interest to be selfless.
That is a powerful way to end the show. But I'll not make the concluding remarks. Let's allow the gentleman who has just been recognized as national level.
Yes, we celebrate you. My brother, we celebrate you.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I hope you still pick our calls.
No, because the number of calls have increased. The number of calls have increased. But let me just allow our viewers at home, wherever they are.
But before you say that, Owilla,
yes.
Can you give us an assurance that these elections will be free, fair, and predictable?
Predictable.
I mean, I'm a firm believer on any election being free, fair, transparent, and most importantly, for me, verifiable. So I can confidently say on my own behalf and on behalf of the values that I represent, that is my commitment to ensure that the elections are going to be free, fair, transparent, and verifiable. And to Kenyans outside there, I think a lot has been going on, especially the discussions around funding of education, all these bursaries. And I totally agree with the sentiments here that MPs would find it difficult to legislate against that because it sort of gives them some lever to amass political capital as the people who give this money. But the law as it is, the National Government CDF Act, is very clear. The MPs have zero role in the management of National Government CDF. Absolutely zero. They're actually like patrons. But be it as it may, it is important to look at it, in some sort of duality. That on the one hand, they'll make law to ensure that no one bothers them with all these issues of school fees, because then they'll make laws to provide free education. But on the second hand, they will be doing Kenyans a big favor by relinquishing money that has been scattered everywhere into a central pool where Kenyans will enjoy economies of scale. I think this is a conversation that will still continue, the same as the conversation that we've had earlier on here on university funding and many other conversations, including conversations around universal access to health, the shift that we're having from NHIF to SHIF. I'm told that the biggest cure that SHIF is intended to do is to ensure that the national insurance does not provide what it cannot deliver. And everything NHIF was giving Kenyans, SHIF is going to either give the same or give better. But I think that those are conversations that are very critical. Last week in my university, there was a conversation around the funding of health. And one of the key things that came out was the question of, capitation of hospitals and setting up of hospitals that are specialists, so that you don't spread a surgeon to an area where a surgeon will only get to see people who requires expertise, like 5% in an entire month. So you concentrate them in an area. And I think these are very critical conversations. And as the show that focuses on politics, polity, and policy. We'll keep having this conversation. Let me send you guys back to whatever you were doing before the show started by saying we will do this again next time. This has been the FiresideKE, the show that brings you politics, polity, and policy. Thank you very much, lady and...
Asante sana.